Um, okay, so now for something completely different. The math is, don't worry about there isn't really much math here. Um, I'm interested in how the brain works, as I think we all are here. And so I for quite a while I've been modeling vision and using neural nets. And I have uh, two alternate titles for this. So we all know about CNNs, and they're based on some priors about the visual world. So nearby pixels correlate with nearby pixels. So there's this locality principle. This is Tess Cottrell. If you saw in my sign off, she's the one who said this song makes me nostalgic for a memory I don't have. Um, and there's stationary statistics basically in the world. So filter features useful in one place are likely to be useful in another. And the identity of an object doesn't change depending on the location in the image. So we should have translation invariance, and objects are made of parts. So the receptive fields of neurons in a convolutional neural network tend to get bigger the deeper you go. And uh, Jan did this work back in '89, but there's been some precursors, especially Fukushima. And so the network has all these properties that uh, model those particular features of the visual world. Okay, everybody, we're good there? So, and they're currently one of the best models we have for the primate visual system, at least the ventral temporal lobe part of it, as some of the speakers have discussed. But there's something fundamentally wrong with them as models of primate vision. So one thing that's not usually considered is the resolution of the image, as Bruno just referred to. CNNs have high resolution everywhere with translation invariance. That's good for recognizing objects at any location in an image. But I want you to fixate on this cross. Okay, everybody fixate on the cross. Keep your eyes on the cross. It's a visual, you have to look. Okay, she's not going to look. Okay. Now keep fixated and now tell me what word is over there on the right. You can't do it, right? So So much for high resolution and translation invariance. So we only have high resolution in the fovea. It's about the size of your thumbnail at arm's length. While CNNs have high resolution everywhere. And that's why we move our eyes quite frequently, about 3 times a second, which if you pencil it out, if you're awake 16 hours a day, you move your eyes about 172,000 times a day. So that's the one decision you make more than any other in your life. It's not as important as who to marry, but it's very frequent.
An introduction about that. If you just simply scale that word up by the size of the retinal ganglion cell receptor fields, you can read it.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Yeah, translation invariance if it's big enough, but it's just yeah.
Mhm. Okay, so I'm going to talk about my model. I call the model because Poggio had the standard model, so I decided to call mine the model, TM. So it starts with an actual image as input. That's now called image computable. It applies a convolution of multi-scale Gabor filters. Hey, it's convolutional. Does a form of statistical pooling with PCA, which can be learned by a simple autoencoder. Hey, it does pooling. And the hidden layers learn features in the service of the task. So, hey, it's deep. It's a deep convolutional neural network. And what I do with this is I typically do with it is train the model to do the same task people do. That's now called a task-driven model, and use the model to explain behavioral, developmental, and imaging results without fitting parameters. My favorite example of my work in my career is why the fusiform face area is recruited for other tasks, but I don't have time to go into that. but that's my favorite. It's just not cited as much. So I've counted for a lot of data with this model. And so now I'm going to go on to talk about the model 2.0, which is the point of this talk. So it's deeper, so more anatomical constraints. So it's got a foveated retina, the log polar mapping from the visual field to V1, central and peripheral pathways, and sampling of the image using salient. So it moves its eyes. So we all know about the retina, I think, so I can probably skip this quickly, but basically, you have a high density of cones in your retina and in your fovea, and then mostly rods as you go out the visual angles. And then there's this log polar transformer. At least it's approximate. The representation on V1 can be approximated by a log polar transform. And that separates the central from peripheral representations. And there's this huge cortical magnification. So almost half of the of V1 is taken up with foveal input. And it's not really magnification. It's just that you have so many photoreceptors in your fovea, and they've got to go somewhere. So they take up a lot of V1. So, and the mapping is approximately log polar, so it's log R and then theta, and that separates central from peripheral representations. Just this is for people that are bad at math, but you get the idea. Okay. Um, So now the map is formatted for two pathways. So you can have a central pathway, which innervates the ventral stream, the fusiform face area, LFC, et cetera, and the peripheral pathway that innervates the parahippocampal place area. And we've used this model to model some results in humans in scene processing. But so the log polar representation has some advantages. My favorite is that it's biologically plausible. It's still retinotopic, so standard conduits can still process it. Pixels that are near in the world are near on the representation. It's scale and rotation equivariant. Those are just a translation. So here's Jeff at multiple scales. Here's Jeff log polarized at multiple scales. And I find the hoops that computer vision people jump through to achieve this to be pretty baroque. Here's asshole, and here's asshole rotated slightly, and you can see that the representation in the log polar shifts up as you rotate them a little bit. Okay. And so when these are fed into a standard convolutional network, you get which is translation invariant mostly. You get rotation and scale invariance. Okay. But translation invariance in the original domain is lost, and we make up for that by fixating the image at different points, and then we have to learn that those appearances go together. So the top is standard crops for data augmentation for a CNN. Here it's focusing on the mouth and one eye, the other eye, and the nose, and you can see that they look quite different. And what I really like about this is that just by moving our eyes, we're self-augmenting our data. And so I think of this as natural augmentation. Okay, so uh, now I want to talk about how this accounts for the face inversion effect. Faces, Kohler is one of the first Gestalt psychologists, noticed that faces looked weird upside down. And as a Gestalt psychologist, he wanted to know, is it because of the disruption of the face with its surrounding context, or is it something about its projection on the retina? So he had devised this clever experiment where he looked through his legs while a assistant held the face right side up, a picture of a face, and it still looks strange, but inverted it looked normal, so he concluded it's the projection on the retina, not the relation to the surround. There's been some other work since. I'll skip over this. Um, but so could the face inversion effect start in V1? And I just want to say a couple things about face recognition. It's an example of visual expertise. We all have two eyes, a nose, a mouth, and two ears, and yet we have to individuate each other. And so we're doing fine level discrimination of homogeneous categories. So for example, these two women are exactly the same. They look quite different because one has the eyes moved up. That's really the same woman with the eyes moved up. And, inverted, it's hard to tell which is the real George W. here. You want to pick one? Okay, how about this one? Which one was the real George W.? Okay. Well, I used this thing in PowerPoint where you can take an oval and move it around. But the point is that the configuration of the features is what's critical in face recognition. So who's this? Adele, right? But that's not really Adele. Okay, so how can an inversion effect happen if the model is rotation invariant? And the answer is there's a topological difference between rotation and scale in the log polar plane. So rotation in the log polar representation, scale is just a shift left or right. Rotation is a shift up and down. But there's a fundamental difference. Rotation is a circle group. And your brain is not a Coke can. So when the input rotates, it falls off the top and appears again on the other side, rearranging the feature configuration. So here's asshole again. And notice right side up, his nose is next to his left eye in the log polar representation. A small rotation, they're still in the same configuration. But when you invert him, now his nose is next to his right eye. So you've disrupted the configuration. Meanwhile, the features themselves are the same. And so when this visual psychologist says you revert to feature processing when the face is inverted, this fits with that really well. So I'm just going to have a single track network here and train it on face recognition, doubling the number of identities every 40 epochs to simulate increasing exposure. First, you know your parents and your siblings, and then you go to daycare and you learn some more people, etc., and then test it on held upright and held out faces. And this is what you get. We have better results now that I'm not showing here. But what you see is that the more faces, each little inflection there is you're doubling the number of faces until you've got 128, and it relearns learns the new faces, and the inversion effect gets bigger the more faces you know, the more you're an expert at face recognition. The same thing happens with the CNN. So, what's my story? Well, my story is that the CNN drops nearly to chance, but people don't. CNNs can't handle inversion. Okay. And so LPNet is more like humans. Um, the inversion effect is much less severe for objects as it is with people because objects can be in many orientations and we don't have to generally individuate objects. They're a basic level category. On the other hand, dog show judges, Diamond and Carey, showed that when you inverted pictures of dogs, they were worse at recognizing them. And in fact, in one experiment, the non-experts actually were less impaired by inversion than the experts were. And the network's showing the same thing here. And overall, our networks match Yin's 69 results. the size of the inversion effect is highest for faces than for houses that are mono-oriented, and then more than objects. And so we met, and similarly, we matched Diamond and Carey's results. So anatomy matters. The log polar network has nice properties. Inversion effects fall out of the topology of the cortex. It's flat. It's not a torus. And the nature of the problem, fine level discrimination of homogeneous categories versus basic level objects, which are a much smaller effect. So we conclude that using Euclidean coordinates and high resolution everywhere are the wrong prior for models of human vision. And I want to thank my students who've been working on this. Yeah. So. Yeah.
You said that eye movements can augment our object recognition. And I was wondering, why doesn't eye movements solve this problem of inversion? So just moving your eyes to the right position.
Well, as I said, when visual expertise tends to, especially for faces, to depend on the configuration of the faces. It's called holistic processing, but it's not some California incense and candles thing. It's like the relationship between the eyes and the mouth and the nose. And yeah, we can move our eyes and focus on the eyes and stuff, but the relationship between the features themselves gets disrupted. So that's why the log polar network can still recognize things that are inverted. That it's still got the features. So it does, reasonably well. Now we've got it up to about 50% inversion, correct for inverted faces. Yeah, so yeah.
So just following up, does that mean that there's maybe a best place to look when you're trying to recognize something, or you could develop preferences to look at certain things?
Yeah, there is a best place to look. So Janet Shao and I showed a few years ago that when you saccade to a face, you tend to land about here. So there's a preferred landing position, and then you start to move more towards the eyes. Yeah.
So this is not my field, so this may be, out of field question. Yeah, these famous prism experiments where when you wear a prism goggle, you
Yeah.
can learn to sort of recognize the visual scenery and get used to that. So it's showing enormous plasticity. So are faces kind of accepted from this learning effect?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer, and I don't know that anyone's done the experiment.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, there are these famous prism experiments where a person wears glasses that inverts the whole world, and after a few days, they can ride a bicycle. So would that lead to them being bad at faces? And I would guess that it would, but I don't know that anyone's done that experiment. We have Stuart Ansis here who actually did one where he inverted the video. And then he actually adapted to that after a while. Okay, no other questions?
Perfect on time.
Okay, time for the next talk.